Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Amanda. I'm autistic, I have ADHD, I have total aphantasia and a memory disorder called SDAM, that stands for Severely Deficient Autobiographical Memory. I have playlists on all of these subjects, so make sure you check them out. So a couple of days ago in my comment section, I had someone who asked if I would do a video talking a little bit about what it was like to grow up undiagnosed autistic. So I got diagnosed last year at the age of 42, about a month after my teenage twins got also diagnosed with autism and ADHD. And so for the last, it was last fall, so almost a year now, I have been processing what that means, what it looks like, and really there's a lot of trauma that goes in with being undiagnosed. There's a lot of systemic ableism that happens in our culture that really affects people who don't get diagnosed autistic because of having to mask, to be neurotypical and try to fit into society without getting labels thrown on you like you're the weird kid or the too energetic kid or the too loud, too bossy. Like we get all of these labels that are really just autistic, like I'm autistic. And a reminder that all autistic traits are human traits. So any one person can share an autistic trait, maybe even several of them. But the difference is that for somebody who's autistic, the severity of the trait, like if you are sensitive to light or noise, it's going to be a lot more intense for an autistic person. And so it's the severity and the intensity and like the frequency, like how often is this happening? Do you every once in a while like, oh gosh, I'm really sensitive to light today? When an autistic person, we are going to be struggling with light almost every single day. It is not a static disorder. There are some days where a sunny day doesn't bother me at all for some reason I don't understand, but there are many days where light level affects me. Whether it's too bright or too dim, it causes me sensory problems. And every single autistic person is going to be different. So the other thing, when I got that request to make a video on this, my first thing was like, oh, okay, this is going to be difficult because of my memory disorder. So I don't create autobiographical memories. So I have semantic memory. So that means that I have facts and knowledge about things that have happened to me growing up, but I cannot relive memories because of having SDAM. And just because of like a lot of times I get this question, I'm clinically diagnosed with autism and ADHD, but both aphantasia and SDAM are still being researched, and so they are not clinical diagnoses at this point. But after doing a lot of research, a lot of research and talking to other people who also identify as having SDAM, I'm just really confident that that is what's going on with my memory. So I kind of like brainstormed some different things that I know, again, happened to me. And again, I will use words like, oh yeah, I remember blah, blah, blah. And it's not that I'm actually remembering. It's like when a blind person says, oh yeah, I watched that TV show. We use the language that is common, even if it doesn't necessarily always apply to us. So my really best friend is blind. And so she will say, you know, yeah, let's watch that show. But she's really just listening. We all know that. And same thing, you know, a deaf person will say, oh, I heard so-and-so said, and they didn't hear it, but that's just the language we use. And I have to do that with memories. I will often say, oh, I remember blah, blah, blah. Well, it's not that I'm remembering the event. It's that it's something that I am remembering the fact about it. So in a way, I'm remembering it, but I don't actually re-experience it. I don't have any of the extra details or anything like that. And I go into a lot more details in different SDAM videos. And a lot of the memories that I do have are family stories that have been told over and over and over. The more something is repeated, the more it's going to stick in my memory as a fact. So looking back, one of the very, very first stories that I remember being told about me that now is like, oh yeah, that was autism. And I'm sure there are some from my infancy, but I'd have to talk to my mom more about that. I haven't really actually asked her, and that might be something fun to do, sit down with her and ask her some of the things that, looking back, she might remember now that she knows I'm autistic. Did I have behaviors as an infant and little toddler? My first sentence when I was a toddler was, my name, Amanda Nicole Self. And I would stomp my foot. And if anybody was nearby who had called me my nickname that my mom was trying to get, which was Mandy at the time, I would kick them in the shin. And the thing was, I was learning my name, and because of my autism and being literal, I didn't understand the concept of nicknames. I didn't understand why people were calling me Mandy and then telling me when I was learning my name that I was learning my full name. And so I was like, well, why are you telling me my name's Amanda Nicole and then telling me my name is Mandy? That doesn't make any sense. And so because I didn't understand the concept of nicknames, I'd get really angry. So that is one of my family's funny stories that they love to tell me all the time about how angry I would get. And so no one ever was allowed to call me Mandy. So like getting a little older and then going to school, like in elementary school, I was never aware of trends. And at the time, people would say I was trying to be a trend setter, but not really. It was just that I was kind of blissfully unaware of trends, honestly. And I did pretty silly neurodivergent things. Like I thought it was really fun to wear mismatched socks with lots of colors. And I would take my shoelaces and put different colored shoelaces on my tennis shoes. And I did not care what the other kids were wearing or using as far as their school supplies were or anything like that. Like I just kind of, they say, march to the tune of your own drum. That was me. Like I was blissfully unaware of all of the trendy things happening around me. I really just didn't relate to my peers. I was in my own little world most of the time. I had a hard time making friends. And I had my nose, once I learned how to read, I had my nose in a book all the time. Hyperlexia is a common trait for Hyperlexia is a common trait for low support needs, high masking autistic people. And that just means that you learn to read a lot earlier than most neurotypical people, and you often read above age level too. When the other kids wanted to go outside for recess, I was just interested in reading my book. I was always wanting to read. At one point, I don't know how old I was, but the library that I belonged to, and I don't know if this was a school library or a city library or what, but they had a book limit. Like you can only check out like 3 or 4 books at a time. And I remember just getting really upset about that because I had to, I guess it was like maybe my public library, because I had to rely on my mom to take me to the library. And I'm like, I'm going to read these books too quickly. I need more books. Like I will read these 3 books in 2 days, and it's going to be a week before I can come back to the library. And so that was a struggle for me, but they did not break the rules. They didn't let me check out more books. One early sign of pathological demand avoidance profile of autism, which is a profile of autism that I have, is, again, I was a hyper reader. I love to read, but I always, if I started to read a book and I didn't like it, I would put it aside and not read that book anymore. Well, when I got to school, I was told to read a certain book, and I didn't want to read that book. And my mom and teachers, like, well, Amanda, you have to read this book. It's part of the school assignment. You have to read it. And it just felt like the demand of my system, like, I don't want to read this. This isn't interesting to me. I didn't understand why I should have to read it. Why would anybody read something that was boring? Like, it's so interesting looking back at it from an autistic perspective. Like, if something wasn't logical and didn't make sense to my brain, I just didn't want to do it. And finally, what got me to read the book, and I don't actually know if I ever finished the book all the way, but my mom told me, she said, the assignment was that you had to read the book and write a report. She said the assignment didn't say you had to like the book, and the assignment didn't say you had to leave a good review on the book. And so I wrote up a book report about why the book was the stupidest book ever. So that's how I finally got through the assignment, but I honestly don't know if I actually ever finished that book. One of the other things that I did as an autistic student in school was that whenever a teacher had open seating instead of assigned seating, especially like, once you got to high school and stuff, I would always choose to sit in the front row. And this might not be the same for a lot of autistic, especially ADHD kids. A lot of people probably preferred to sit in the back. I'm just guessing. I'm not sure on that one. But for me, I would always sit in the front, because if I sat in the back, I would have too many distractions. And I also have auditory processing disorder. Again, I didn't know that growing up, but I would lip read people. I can't purposefully lip read. It's all like a subconscious thing. But I watch people's lips and it helps me process their words. And so I would always want to sit in the front of the classroom to be able to not have all the distractions of the kids in front of me, and then to be able to focus and listening to what the teacher was trying to say. So that is another thing that is one way my autism and ADHD showed up, because I was a very good kid in class. Like, I never wanted to cause trouble, and I always followed all the rules. And so I didn't want to get distracted. Like, I just wanted to focus and do my classwork. Which leads to the next point. I would go above and beyond, because when I didn't understand, and I've talked about this in other videos too, when I didn't understand the parameters of an assignment, or understand exactly what the teacher was wanting, and I had no way to base it off of what other students may or may not turn in, I would go like 10 times above and beyond the scope of the assignment. And because then obviously I couldn't fail, because my work was just like too good. Like, I got a lot of teachers. I was always like a teacher's pet, because my assignment was so exemplary. And I'm getting distracted because I have a tangent about the word I just said. Okay, let me finish my sentence. Exemplary. Oh, many teachers would ask to keep my project, my work, so they could show it the next year to students who had to do that project, which I'm sure they all loved me for, right? But going back to my tangent, so because of my aphantasia, I have total aphantasia. It means I don't visualize in my mind, but I also can't hear sounds in my head. So, and going back to hyperlexia, I have a really big vocabulary, but oftentimes, especially when it's words that I've read and I've never heard out loud, I can't practice the word inside my head and hear it because there's no sound in my head. And so, and as y'all know, I try to do as little editing on my videos as possible because I'm showing you how it would be to interact with me as a real neurodivergent person. And this is things that I have to do in real life because if I want to use a word that I don't know how to quite pronounce, I have to say it out loud because it's the only way I can hear it. And then I can, once I've said it, then I can go, oh yeah, that's right or wrong. So like in my last video, I stumbled over the word aristocracy. I still can't say that word. And the thing is like, I know the word, but because I can't hear it and I can't see the spelling of it in my head, I will sometimes have to practice it a couple of times to get the right word out. So yeah, when I stumbled over exemplary, it's like I have to hear it and then I will know it's wrong. Sometimes I can correct myself. Sometimes I have to go and look it up and hear the pronunciation or see the pronunciation guide to be able to say it. But my vocabulary is a lot bigger than my spoken vocabulary because of how much reading I've always done. And like in a normal YouTube video, you would edit that out or you would pause it and go look up the word and say it correctly. But I really like to just talk off the cuff and do as little editing as possible because I can't edit my real life. And yes, I can edit YouTube videos, but that's not the point of this channel. The point of this channel is for you to be able to see me in all my neurodivergent glory. So another autistic kind of trait for me was really never trying out for clubs in school or after school. I was in Girl Scouts, and Girl Scouts, I think, really honestly saved me in a lot of ways, which I'm not going to go down that tangent, but Girl Scouts really was, very good for me to be in. But other than that, like I wanted to try out for so many different clubs, but because of the anxiety and doing things new and not understanding the protocols for trying out on new things, you know, I was struggling so much with doing the basic things that you have to do, like going to the lunchroom for the first time at a new school. I remember that caused me so much anxiety. I was worried that I would know where to go to eat lunch, like on my first day of like middle school. I was so busy dealing with just like the literal normal things that you had to do to go get through school, that anything extra like trying out for clubs was too much for me to be able to deal with. Like I didn't try out for things. Like I wanted to try out for like theater or there was an art club or I don't even remember, but I didn't try out for any things like that because it was outside of what I could handle. And I didn't know to ask for any of this. Being undiagnosed, I didn't know that I could go to my counselor and say, hey, I'm autistic. I really want to try out for theater, but I need help because I don't know what you're supposed to do to try out for theater. Like if I had the vocabulary of why I was having the anxiety, I could get accommodations or ask for help. I just had this anxiety and I didn't have any way to explain it to the adults in my life. So I just didn't do it. And then like if a teacher would say, oh, Amanda, you should really try out for this club. I'd get like a panic attack and be like, no, I just don't want to. I'm not interested. And even though I was interested, my brain knew it was too much. So I would tell the grown-ups in my life that I didn't want to do it. And the last one that I wrote down was not really understanding or relating to school pride or like the football team, like in high school. I grew up in Texas. So Texas is all about high school football. And I don't know if this is an autistic thing. Like, I don't know if this is a common autistic thing, but I kind of feel like it is. I think a lot of autistic people, unless it's your special interest, I think a lot of autistic people struggle with relating to big sports franchises. And again, I might be wrong, and no autistic person's the same, but I've just never... I never had that school pride. Like, I went to that school. I survived that school. I had some good days. I had some bad days. Like, it was whatever. But like, other kids would wear t-shirts with the school name on it and like buy all this like school gear. And I never understood or related to that. And I think that was due to being autistic. That feels like a good fit. So I would love to hear in the comments if you understand what I'm talking about and if you kind of relate to that. And it's kind of different. Like, it relates, but it's different from fandoms. I also struggle growing up to really get into any kind of fandom, but I think that also was a little bit more of PDA, profile of autism, because belonging to a fandom then felt like a demand. And if that doesn't make sense, make sure you go watch some of my PDA videos, because it's a perceived demand. It's not a real demand. It's not real. It just, your brain tells you it's like threatening in some way. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I wish that, believe me, I wish my memory worked in such a way that I could fill in with like, oh my gosh, story time. Let me tell you about the time that I blah, blah, blah. I don't really have many of those because I can't relive memories. My memory is just a list of facts about things that happened in my life. So that's all I can share with you. Anyway, until the next one, guys, bye.